Oh, there you go.
There we are.
Yep, there we are. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our January 22nd, 2019 regularly scheduled school board meeting. Melissa, would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Kathleen Abrazizi?
Here.
Jason Cipriano?
Here.
Caitlin Parnell?
Here.
James Sweeney?
Here.
Karen Yasenka?
Here.
And Pinkerton Academy Student Liaison Emma Johnston?
Here.
Thank you. And also seated at the board table is Assistant Superintendent Dr. Roxanne Wilson.
Thank you. You please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, let's start off with the approval of minutes. You'll see before you tonight 4 sets from December 11th, a regular meeting and a non-public meeting. And January 8th, we have the public hearing and a special meeting. Please take a look at those.
Motion to accept the December 11th, the 2 sets of December 11th meeting minutes.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion on the December 11th meeting?
No.
Seeing none, all in favor of accepting them as presented? It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
When you're ready, I'll accept a motion to accept the January 8th public hearing and special meeting.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Are there any public comments?
There are none tonight.
Thank you. I'm going to do this a little out of order, and right now I'm going to ask Mr. Gary to come forward and give us a little report on weather. Didn't know you were a meteorologist, huh?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I think I should have a green screen behind me.
Tell us how
It is
weather
cold,
is affecting
right?
our schools.
So I visited the Hampstead Central School today, as I have, since I started to take temperature readings. And I wanted to report to you tonight that in the classroom spaces, we were averaging, between 68 and 70 degrees on the interior spaces. We were shooting the interior walls, student desks and whatnot. But it's important to point out the deficiencies with the 1960s wing. And I wanted to report to you that we were getting readings anywhere from 45 degrees to 50 degrees on those exterior uninsulated walls. So I guess I'd like to share with you, I really do hope that this year that the community supports the renovation project so we can address this, because you can imagine how detrimental it is to the educational environment when we're dealing with basically an igloo, right? In 1960s wing, I'd equate it to an igloo. You feel the walls, they're cold. Put anything on the windowsill, it's going to freeze. And it's unfortunate if you're actually sitting on that side of the classroom and trying to learn, right? In order to keep those temperatures up in the classrooms, so we didn't have to move children, we had to bring in maintenance folks yesterday to make sure the heat was on full blast all day yesterday, even though the building was unoccupied, so we could maintain those temperatures. So aside from the learning environment, just the sheer utility waste, by keeping these systems going isn't prudent long-term. So I did want to bring that to the board's attention. And, from the facilities end, I can't say enough how important the project would be the community supports it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Not only, as you said, for the building and the learning environment, but also I think people in town need to start understanding that we're just throwing money out. Extra heat, money is literally going out through the windows and with the lack of insulation. So I can't say it enough. I just hope this is the year that everyone will embrace it and come together as a community and pass this for everybody, for the kids and for the residents. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome, Madam Chair.
I'd just like to ask Mr. Collins, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I was just wondering, I know in the summer, when the rooms were 90 degrees plus, some alternative measures were taken to move kids out of the classrooms when possible, if there was a free room or a library or something. Are we at the point where we need to do anything like that now because of the coldness?
I would say not. I went and walked through the building. Tom was at the building with one of our maintenance guys looking through it. I would say right now, we just need to be spending a great deal of extra funds on oil to heat that into the building, because we have not had any of those issues. We're fortunate we have a relatively efficient and relatively new heating system, but I would say we're overheating just to keep the rooms up. I would also say that it is definitely an uneven heat source, but we haven't got any of the parts of the room that are very cold, just like we had the extreme heat, because it is trapped in. We do keep the doors closed as much as possible. If we do need to go there, it would probably have to be from something that would have occurred because of some portion of the building freezing and creating a problem. That has occurred in this building because maybe 12, 13 years ago, the upstairs classroom, which was Peg Hannigan's at the time, the pipes froze over a long weekend very similar to the one we just experienced. And we came back in school, and when the heat went on, it thawed the pipes, and then we had a nice little flood in the classroom directly below it. So I think we've improved some outdoor systems for ventilation and heat systems where that has not occurred. So that's something that I know Tom and Dan have been watching very carefully on a daily basis. So if we did have something like that, we would need to be there. So I think they were in the building the weekend just checking for things of that nature. It hasn't impacted students yet.
Thank you. Are there any other questions relative to the weather?
Well, I was just wondering if the teachers and students were wearing their jackets in the classroom today. I know that there have been days in the past where they haven't been able to take off their outdoor clothing. So I just wanted to know.
When I walked around the building, they were running around like a bunch of 5 to 10-year-olds being children. There's
After a
always a
4-day
child
weekend
that
and no-
tends to wear a jacket. I didn't see that being a major concern today.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Next, Emma Johnston. Why don't you tell us what's going on at Pinkerton these days?
Hey, so since this is my first meeting back, Happy New Year on behalf of the Pinkerton community. And so since we just came out of the holiday season, I would like to point out some of the organizations that Pinkerton donated to over the season. The Foreign Language Honor Society had their annual coat drive. The Educators Rising Teams collected donations for the Upper Room Christmas Drive. The Freshman Academy did their annual Penny Challenge. The second annual Medium Gallery, and this event was founded by a student to raise money for the Pinkerton Academy Homeless Fund. And finally, the Future Business Leaders of America held their food drive. Okay. So we just came out of midterms week and finished the first semester. And overall, it was very successful. And for midterms week, it was especially nice to have the visit of emotional support dogs to help students with the stress. There are also a couple events coming up that I would like to inform you all on. Milli Vanilli is a lip sync battle among the clubs and organizations at Pinkerton, held in the Stockbridge Theater on January 30th. And on Thursday, January 31st, Pinkerton will be having the annual course night for incoming freshmen to learn about all of the many courses at Pinkerton. This is the perfect timing for this because students from 8th grade to 11th grade at Pinkerton will be selecting courses for the 2019 to 2020 school year. Thank
Emma,
you.
what was that date? Did
For
you, the course night, did I miss that?
January 31st.
Thank you.
Okay. Emma, I'm going to ask you to do something, just think about something while we're having our meeting. This Thursday is the Sending Towns Dinner at Pinkerton. And some of us go, I know I'm going, and I think Dr. Wilson may be going, and anyone else. The point is, we go and we listen to the Board of Trustees talk, and they tell us things about what's going on at Pinkerton and relative to our different towns. So I should have asked you earlier, but I just thought, if you could think of anything that you would want addressed at that meeting, relative to Hampstead, education, sports, clubs, anything, why don't you let us know at the end of the meeting, and we can bring that up Thursday night, okay?
All right, sounds good.
All right, thanks, Emma.
Welcome.
Moving on to current business. First up, we have Future Business Leaders of America, a presentation here by Zoe Vogel and Olivia. Your last name, Olivia?
Freebies.
Pardon me?
Freebies.
Furbies. So I'm going to let you self-introduce if you like, and tell us a little bit about Future Business Leaders of America.
Sure.
Thank
All
you.
right, so I'm Olivia, and I'm a junior at Pinkerton Academy, and I'm part of FBLA, and my role is a event planner.
I'm also a junior at Pinkerton, and we're both from Hampstead, actually. And I'm an event planner in FBLA alongside Olivia, and I've been in the club for 3 years now, and this is my first year as an officer. And FBLA, like, we do a lot of events that we put on, like, for the school, and one of our biggest ones that the club puts on is, like, actually one of the biggest events, like, at Pinkerton, and it's called Pinkerton's Got Talent. And we audition about 40 kids for the show, and we end up taking around 16 or 17 acts. And we always will donate a portion of the proceeds to Make-A-Wish because FBLA works very closely with Make-A-Wish. And this year we were actually able to raise $1,700 for the charity, which was a really big thing for FBLA. In addition, we also got sponsors for the show. And basically what sponsors do is they donate in order to have, like, their business advertised, like, within the program, or like a big sign, or like on the big check we'll give to the winner. And, like, it's a really great way for, like, not only us as a club, but also members of the committee that put on the show to reach out to local businesses and sort of, like, form those ties with local businesses. And in addition to Pinkerton's Got Talent, we also put on smaller events that are just as important but not as big in scale. Some of those events would be a breast cancer walk that we do in October where members will wear pink and they can bring whoever they want. And it's just a short walk for charity. And we also have an opioid awareness week where we will, like, donate money to opioid awareness foundations, and also, like, have guest speakers come in and talk to students about disposal of opioids, and also how to, like, deal with the crisis that's facing New Hampshire. So FBLA is not only a business club, we also try to get involved within, like, the community in ways like that. But Olivia's going to talk a little bit more about, like, the club itself and how students can get more involved.
Yeah, so we also have a full club team. We have around between 50 to 100 kids each year that do join. Pretty much what they can do is when they attend all of the different community service and the talent shows and everything that's going on, they get merit points. And all the merit points will add up, and it depends on if FBLA will be on your transcript or not. So it depends on how involved you are in the club and everything, and how you can rack up your merit points to be an officer for the upcoming year. At the end, which is going to be in March, we go to states, which pretty much we compete with all the other chapters in FBLA in New Hampshire, and we compete against them with a bunch of different business events. Pinkerton does very well. We come within first and second place, and then we attend nationals. It's really great. Pinkerton has done very well in the past, and we are planning on doing very great this year as well.
Yeah, so FBLA like for me, has given me the opportunity to get more involved within the Pinkerton community because like without the club, like I wouldn't have had any chances to sort of like be involved with like the charity or even to play on Pinkerton's Got Talent, which like was something I never would have expected to do my freshman year just because like it's such a big undertaking with so many moving parts. Like Olivia and I, we had to coordinate sponsorships and show date and like audition dates and things like that. Like we had to basically run the whole thing. And like that's like sort of like a out of the ordinary high school experience just because it's almost like we're playing an event for like something that's not a high school, I guess is what I want to say. And also like it's given me the chance to sort of hone like my skills like as like a public speaker and just like talking to like larger groups of people, and also just like the discipline that goes into being a member of the club has like been a really big part of it for me. And just like to wrap it all up, I guess, we'd like to thank you for your time, and if you have any questions on how members of, or not members, but people from sending towns can get more involved within the club, like we'd be happy to answer any of your questions or just anything about FBLA in general. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Are there any questions?
What are some of
comments?
the, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Who's the advisor?
Mr. Smith, he's a business teacher at Pinkerton. Yeah.
If you can name one of the challenges at the States, you do some business challenges against other schools, what would be one of the challenges?
So this year, Olivia and I are actually doing one together because we planned the talent show together, and it's a partnership with business. And we're going to focus mainly on like the sponsorships from local businesses that we got. And for that, we plan on writing a 15-page paper and also giving a short presentation during States. And States happens during March, and then Nationals happens during June.
Right, great, thank you very much.
Very worthwhile organization. You're doing good works.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Parnell, you want to talk to us about the concerns of the District Safety Committee?
Sure. We had a meeting back in December. This has been the first chance we've had to have a regular school board meeting and bring it up. And one of the things that was brought up was the crosswalk for middle school that used to cross Main Street to School Street. The state paved Main Street earlier this year, and we no longer have a crosswalk. So it was brought up as a concern by several members of the committee as well as our SRO officer. And originally I just wanted to bring it to the attention of the board. I did get an update from Detective Conway this morning because it's kind of a gray area of is it the state, is it the town, whose responsibility really is this crosswalk, because we do need it. We have kids who are walking, and Main Street is not a great place to be trying to cross without a crosswalk. So the update Detective Conway gave me today is that both Chief Bowden, John Worthen, the road agent, and the Board of Selectmen are all aware of it, and they have started talking about it. They've kind of tabled the discussion until April, mainly because we can't do anything about it in the middle of winter. It's not a project that can be done. But as for us as a board, I think we need to have it on our radar and be following up with the town. There was some discussion about new regulations involving lighting, warning lights that need to go up in advance of the crosswalk. So I think we need a little more information, and it's something the safety committee should be meeting again, I believe, in March. So it'll be before kind of that April timeframe. And I'll be bringing up again at that point and talking about who needs to be doing what to get this done and to get a crosswalk back for the kids.
I can try to clarify a couple of those things.
Sure,
'cause
as you know.
I've done some investigating and some talking, and I've been known to jump out into that middle of that street and stop traffic for people.
Are there a fair number of students that are crossing there?
When there's a crosswalk, yes. This year, there's been maybe one student walking, but last year, there were upwards of 15, 20. I mean, nicer days bring more. I know a majority of the year last year, when weather permitted, there were multiple bikes outside of the middle school. So maybe in Derry, you've seen the new signs for the pedestrians where they press the button and it's just a sign on the side of the road and the sign starts flashing yellow. Those are required in that spot now. And from what I understand, it's the responsibility of who installs those signs and who pays for those signs, more so than painting the strips on the
Right,
road.
the
Painting the
crosswalk in
strips on the
general.
road is very clearly state. But I think those signs cost about, I forget the dollar amount. I want to say $4,000. And so that's the holdup, is the town going to pay for it or is the state going to pay for it? It's very clear that it needs to be there. It's very clear that we need a crosswalk there. And that's what's going on. But yeah, installing a sign like that is not a winter project. And those roads got repaved, I think, in June, July. It was like,
It was the summer.
it was the summer.
Yeah.
So it's been a while already that they've been dragging feet. Somebody's dragging feet. But it definitely needs to get taken care of. I appreciate that the safety committee is all over it in our SRO as well. That's good.
And it'll be on the next agenda, too? The conversation will continue?
In the safety committee?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else?
That was it from the,
That's it from the safety committee?
Yep.
Mrs. Denola's not here, so that's for another night. But under safety, there's also going to be the issue of maybe revisiting and looking at the traffic flow at the parking lot at the middle school
yes.
because of an incident that happened there with a car and a pedestrian. So we're going to take a look at seeing about the drop-off. And do you have some information, Mr. Gary? That'd be helpful.
We did ask Mr. Gary to go up and look at that right after that incident to get some fresh eyes on
And I can report in
exactly-
Mrs. Denola's absence, so immediately after, we had an incident in the parking lot, and we realized that we should kind of look at things and make sure that we have not only safe travel for the students on the campus, but also for our staff. So I met with Detective Conway, met with the school administration, and we kind of sat down, we sketched out some ideas on a Google map, came up with an idea to create a crosswalk at the middle school. Right now, as you indicated, it's tough to, lay paint down to have it stick. So beginning today, the custodial and ground staff set up tall parking cones to delineate the sidewalk for the students from the car travel, and also just to clearly mark for the cars where they're supposed to go afterwards. So with input from the SRO, we were able to pull that off just in a couple of days, and today was the first day it launched. Talked to a few parents that went through it. They were able to still drop off their children, and we feel it's safer travel for the students and staff.
Good, thank you very much. I'm glad that that was taken care of so quickly.
Yep, you're welcome.
Thanks. Next up is our school calendar. We have to decide if we're going to vote and adopt this tonight. Mrs. Bucco is going to talk to us about that. And every year we do this. All I can say is hope everybody takes a close look at it, because we always adopt this, and then like 6 months into it, it's like, oh, wait a minute. Why did we do that? We should have shifted it or done that, put the PD day here. It would have made more sense. So,
We are asking that, this is preliminary. We're not looking for adoption tonight. We
Yep.
want to do that in February.
Okay.
But we wanted to get this into your hands. We already have some changes we need to make because we just got Pinkerton's calendar late Friday afternoon. So Doris is on it and has some more information to share with you.
okay, great, thank you.
Okay. So I want to highlight some portions of the calendar. Looking at August, we have the same opening day as Pinkerton, that Tuesday, the 27th, and Friday would be a no-school day. That's the Friday of the Labor Day weekend, and that is a no-school day for Pinkerton, and we're proposing that be a no-school day for us as well. Labor Day is very early in September. In October, we have our traditional Professional Development Day of the long Columbus Day weekend. November is a month we have to look at, and we'd like to have some further conversation with the union, HEA, as to the placement of that early release day and the parent conference day. We moved it a week later, and Pinkerton does have an early release day on the 7th. However, looking at the calendar as it is now, where we place that early release day and parent conference day is also the same week as the Veterans Day, so it does make it a short instructional week for students, and it may cause some conflicts for parents as far as child care arrangements and the like. So we want to have further conversation with the union as to where we should be placing that early release day and the parent conference day.
Okay.
December, we have our traditional early release day. For January, we moved an early release day to later in the month. And looking at Pinkerton's calendar, they have a teacher workshop day on the 21st. So we won't have that conflict that we had this year with our 8th grade students going to Pinkerton. Now in February, we currently have our PD Day placed on the 11th because as of the moment, that's New Hampshire's primary day. If perchance New Hampshire moves the primary day after our calendar is adopted, we may want to consider moving that day because of the parking issue that's going to occur at middle
Okay.
school.
As well, Pinkerton's going to do the same flexibility. Whenever that day is called, that's the day that they're going to have off as well.
It'll move, okay.
That's going to have to be I think it's going to be set really late this year. I think they're going to hold off, and the Secretary of State's going to hold off on calling that until some other things line up. So I think you're going to be into the school year before that
Before
day
we
is
know
known.
it, yeah. Well, we'll have to make the change even in real time then.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to happen.
Just prepare everyone for that, and, you know, it could be anywhere that late January to,
I would say, and I know we're not approving tonight, but I would say that when this does get published, put an asterisk next to that to make clear to parents as it goes out that it's
Subject
very
to
likely
change.
that this date will change.
Right,
Yeah.
maybe if we even change it from, from labeled as PD to, I don't know, PV, like primary voting day, and then say professional development for teachers, subject to change once state schedules election day. Something like that, if we put that out ahead of time on that particular one. But continue.
And looking at March, we have a PD day on Tuesday, the 10th, which would be voting day in Hampstead. In April, I need to propose a change in moving that early release day because in looking at Pinkerton's calendar, which we received Friday, they also have an early release day on the 9th, which just doesn't work out with both districts having an early release day on the same day. So I'd like
because
to...
of busing.
For busing. So I'd like to propose moving our early release day to Wednesday, the 8th, so we don't conflict with Pinkerton. Then May, early release day before the long weekend, Memorial Day weekend. And right now, if we have no snow days next year, our last day of school will be June 15th, the exact same day as Pinkerton. So any questions?
Just noticing, and I'm just going to comment out loud, that the Christmas break, or the first winter break, what do we call it, holiday break, December 23rd to the January 1st, that is a very long break from school, and I understand why you did it that way. You know, having the kids in school for the 23rd doesn't really make much sense if it's only going to be a one-day week. But I can't help but wonder if it would be suitable to gain a professional development day at least and have one less professional development day. And I don't know how that works with teacher contracts and what have you. And I'm pretty sure that every teacher's rolling their eyes at me right now. But I just, you know, to continue with the with student lessons, you know, like you suggested in November, it makes for a very short week, a 2-day week in November, and then a full week, and then they have another 2-day week I mean, I don't know how much learning is going to be taking place in the month of November, so if we were to move a professional development today to December, I'm just thinking out loud, like I said. Do you see what I'm saying, Mel?
Well, we do want to keep a parent conference day in November, because the quarter ends.
And then early release is partially
A parent conference day
or parent conference?
for middle school.
All right.
If we were to consider adding a professional development day in December, we would probably have to move the March PD day. Because we need to be flexible on the February PD day because of the New Hampshire primary.
Right.
Kathleen, I see what you're saying. One of the obstacles that we have is that we have so many of our teachers are their mothers and fathers and family members, and they're all going to be probably off that week. So it will be, I think, considered as a vacation week in most district calendars. I don't know if we've seen, did the state even do a mock calendar like they have in the past?
They did, and in their calendar, they're proposing that entire week as vacation.
So on the subject of the state calendar, is the DOE saying anything more? The governor was saying last year he didn't want school to start till after Labor Day. Has the DOE said anything more on that?
They had a committee,
Yeah, they had a...
But that's as far as it's gone?
and they basically said, we're going to leave it up to the school districts, but we haven't seen any formal report, at least I haven't.
No formal report.
Okay.
But I think through some of that discussion, they realized that everybody has their reasons for, setting their calendars the way that we always have.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And you said as far as the early release and parent conference day, you can't have that the week before because of Pinkerton's early release?
Yes, Pinkerton has an early release on the 7th. So we're going to be talking to HEA to determine what would be, what we can propose to the board as far as either moving the early release or the parent conference day out of that one very busy week.
Yeah.
And, and there was a proposal from HEA that we consider splitting up the early release and parent conference day. And I think we need to have further conversation about splitting.
So that
Splitting
it's
those
all
days.
not on 1 week.
Correct.
Okay.
Because of Veterans Day being on that Monday. So we definitely will have further conversation with HEA regarding November, the parent conference early release, and the actual full day. And I do propose moving the early release day in April from the 9th to the 8th, just so we don't conflict with Pinkerton. And keeping in mind that there is a possibility that we'll have to change the PD day in February based on New Hampshire primary.
Okay, Mrs. Buick, I think this was a good starting point. I think you've heard some of the concerns of the board, and we've heard some of your concerns that you, or not concerns, but things you have to take into account. So I guess we'll say come back in February, and we'll take a closer look at it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Dancy.
Hi.
Hi, you're going to go through our response to House Bill 1612, which deals with data security in the schools.
Exactly, yes. In fact, it's no longer House Bill 1612, it's RSA 18966. And this is a law now that deals with student and teacher information privacy. And there are some things that we are doing this spring, and the board will have to take action on by June 30th, and that's why I'm bringing it to your attention today in January. So to get into it, there are 5 sections of the law, and the 5th section is the one that we are mostly concerned with because those are the ones that have action items that we need to deal with. There's a data governance plan, data and privacy governance plan that needs to be in place and approved by the board by June 30th of 2019. In that plan, there needs to include an inventory of all software applications, digital tools, and extensions that are used that might potentially collect student or teacher data. All of these software applications and digital tools and extensions need to be reviewed to make sure that they meet or exceed the standards set by the New Hampshire Department of Education. The board will need to adopt policies and procedures for access to data and the protection of privacy for students and staff. And within the governance plan is a response plan for any data breach that exists. And then there's also a requirement for service providers to meet or exceed standards for data protection and privacy. So those are the bullet points of the law itself. And my next slide starts to show you what we have done so far, where we are in the progress of meeting these, the aspects of this new law. First of all, my department has cataloged about 567 software applications, digital tools, and extensions so far. We're not finished yet, but we've just begun gathering all of those little apps that are on the iPads, some of the major things that we purchase every year. We haven't yet gone into our Chrome extensions, but all of those things have to be cataloged and reviewed as a part of this process. Now, everyone knows that we will not finish with all of the review of these by June 19th. June 30th of 2019. We have to have the plan approved by that date, but we know that this isn't, this is Herculean, and I'll explain how we're going to get there, though, as quickly as possible. Right now, the New Hampshire DOE is reviewing the minimum standards for privacy and security of student and employee data. The draft that they have in their hands is based on already conceived federal guidelines that match what our law is saying just about perfectly. The New Hampshire Chief Security Information Officer has been working with the DOE, and he's provided the draft, and it looks very reasonable and very doable. So we're not, that's a good thing. The superintendents are reviewing this next Friday. The officer there, his name is Mr. Dister, is presenting to the superintendents, and I believe that Dr. Wilson will be in that meeting as well, going over this. The DOE should, we're hoping that they'll have this all approved by the end of the month. The New Hampshire Chief Technology Officer Council, the NHCTO, of which I'm a part of, I'm on the executive board for that organization, has created the New Hampshire State Student Data Privacy Consortium to minimize the work of individual districts in securing privacy agreements from vendors. This is the tool that we use is a website that the districts who are members of this consortium, they send off the agreements to all of these different software companies, and then other districts can sign on with the agreement as well, and so that we're all covered, and so that we're spreading the work out amongst all the districts in New Hampshire. And that right now there were, 2 weeks ago at our Friday meeting this month, there were 25 districts sitting around the table that are all eager to get started with this. And so, and there are more that aren't attending that are also wanting to get in on it, because nobody wants to go through this inventory all by themselves and start making these legal agreements. We're working with Woodson and Drummond and Woodson, who is preparing our legal agreement, and they're modeling it after the state of California, who has one of the most stringent agreements. And so we're pretty confident that we're going to be covered pretty well with this. But we are working in concert with these other districts to make it work for us. Also, the school board policy that's recommended by the New Hampshire School Boards Association is under review by the policy team. We looked at it our first time last week. We have some concerns. We have some things that we want to do with this, but that'll be coming to the board probably in April sometime or May. It has to come before June 30th, but we are working on that. The CTO Council is also working on a template for the Data and Privacy Governance Plan. There are some models already out used in the nation. In fact, my former district that I worked at in Missouri is the model that Bedford has come up with, and they're using that to create a template, and we'll be reviewing that on February 8th. As it's something that you can plug in your own school district's data into, and should suffice for us rather than starting from scratch. So our next steps is to keep going with the software inventory, to approve the necessary policies, and then to educate the staff about the implications of the new law. Because what this is going to mean is that staff can no longer just go out and use any kind of tool that they want to and have kids sign up for it. There will be a process where they have to apply, they'll have to look for the tool, apply to have it used. Mrs. Bucco and I and the principals will be reviewing these tools for their data privacy and for the curriculum connection. And then only after they have been approved will teachers be able to use these tools. And then the last thing is to finalize the plan, to submit it sometime in May to be approved in June. And that's pretty much my overview. Do you have any questions?
A couple of questions. Dr. Dancy, what has there any been discussion at this point? What happens if a software vendor refuses to sign the revised agreements?
We are not allowed to use that software in our school district.
And what happens if that software is integral to our district and we can't just flip the switch and go to something else?
There are what they call 4.5 too big to fail vendors that we can't dictate to them what the privacy policy is, but Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple, and Adobe is the half, have data policies that are pretty consistent with what our law states. But those are the ones that are considered, at this point, you can't not use them, so to speak, is my understanding.
I'm thinking just even on a more basic level, I don't know, let's just say school bucks, my school bucks, doesn't meet the standards. I mean,
they're going to lose a lot of business.
Well, but for the sake of argument, right? I mean, we don't have the ability, we wouldn't be able to just flip the switch to a different, it would take some time. We'd have to screen vet.
Exactly.
You'd have to implement, you'd have to transfer all those account balances and everything. Like, it's not a clean process of, oh, you won't sign it? Okay, we've got someone else. You know, you had it today, tomorrow someone else. Like, this is not a simple process is what I'm trying to get to.
Certainly, and there really isn't a data privacy police from the state coming around to check and see if we've complied. And all. These are just the mandates of the law, and you're right, it wouldn't be next day we flip the switch and go somewhere else, but these companies are giving lots of notice, and some of those, like My School Bucks, which is used by lots of districts, know that if they don't comply, they're going to lose a lot of business. And so that's where Drummond and Woodson is coming in. We're sending out the agreement, and if they don't sign it, then if we need to modify the agreement in some way, then they're helping us do that.
It's also a one-to-many model that I think, so that my school, whoever, doesn't get 200 inquiries from school districts in New Hampshire.
Exactly.
They'll get one inquiry and say, yeah, we can meet that, and then that can get pushed out to the districts to say, hey, they've agreed to it, to our template form. As long as you're willing to use the template form, it's all good, and it's been reviewed by legal, and we're okay with it.
Now, there is a provision in the consortium that if Hampstead chose to up the ante and modify the agreement a little bit, it would cost us a little bit extra to have Drummond and Woodson modify the agreement, but that option is available. But that would also mean that we would have, if we wanted to use that agreement instead of the state-adopted agreement, we would have to do all of that work ourselves in negotiating the agreements with all of these companies. Yes, Kathleen?
So I was just trying to simplify this. It's basically like if a hospital didn't want to follow HIPAA, then basically they couldn't be a hospital.
Exactly.
And if a hospital software company didn't want to follow HIPAA, then they wouldn't have any business.
Right.
So basically anybody in the education world, since this is coming down from federal standards, already knows about this and is preparing for this.
Oh, FERPA, COPA, SIPA,
Yeah.
it's all there. They have to comply, and that's what this is based on, are those three big laws concerning student data and privacy.
So with the Chief Technology Officer Council, this definitely sounds like a great organization and a great way to minimize the workload for the districts. So great job there. Wondering, do they have software where they can scan all the privacy agreements to find out if they already comply, or are we going to have to push this out?
What we do is, it's not necessarily that we look at their software agreements. We send them out, instead of them sending us their agreement, we send them our agreement. and they sign it, and then we post it onto the consortium's website, and there's a thing called Section E, and my district, I would sign Section E, and I could post it on my inventory then of the agreement. I'm not even, I mean, yes, I'll point to their privacy agreement, but we will display the one that we have agreed upon that's written for us.
So it supersedes whatever
It supersedes whatever's on their website.
Okay. All right. And so far, you've cataloged 567 separate applications?
Now, whether or not we have to do an agreement with all of those is still under consideration, because many of those don't collect any kind of student data.
Right.
A child goes on there, a first grader gets on his iPad, clicks number munchers and plays number munchers. It's not collecting any personal student data. So we're still kind of up in the air right now as a council, trying to figure out how far do we have to go with that one. But it might be that we just list it and link to their data privacy agreement on the internet. Those ones that we know that students need an account for, say for instance iReady or anything else that we, Brain Pop, anything that kids are signing into, we will have to have a data privacy agreement on file.
Okay. Can I just make a comment? Again, this law has come out, and think of the workload that has put, you know, Dr. Dancy and his department on all of the information inventory. It's been a lot, and I'm glad that, you know, the consortium is coming together, because that will help immensely.
Right.
But what do you think, in terms of what you've been hearing, what's the cost impact going to be, which hasn't been budgeted, because now we're going through first the standards that have just been applied by the New Hampshire DOE. So what do you think the cost estimate might be next year for what we have to do?
Well, fortunately for us, with the consortium, this is going to minimize a lot of what we're doing. The legal costs of Drummond and Woodson are being covered within our consortium fees, and since I'm a member of the Consortium of School Network Officials, which the CTO Council is all about, that gives me free or paid for membership into the Data Privacy Council. And then there's going to be an additional cost of about $1 per student per year in order to maintain these privacy agreements. So we're talking about $1,000 a year to kind of maintain this work here, which is actually quite reasonable when you consider there are some other products out there that do all this for $5,000 a year for our kids. So this is something that I don't think any legislator ever figured out how much it was going to cost individual districts, and that's been a big complaint, that it's kind of an unfunded thing, but it is what we have to do. And it's not, it's really not a bad thing. Ensuring our students' data is kept safe and our teachers' data is kept safe is a priority, and we really want to let staff and parents know that your child's data is safe. And so I'm trying to look at it in a positive manner. Yes, it's a lot of work, but once we get it going, it should be a very positive thing. There are many. Massachusetts was the leader in the consortium, and the man who got it started from Cambridge, he came up and talked to us a couple of weeks ago, and there's a phenomenal work that's been done. Texas, California, they're all doing this too.
Well, we appreciate your leadership.
Any other
in it.
questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing this and all the time that you're putting into it.
All right.
It's necessary. Mrs. Lewisell? You're going to talk to us now about what's necessary for our designated volunteers. Some changes coming up?
Well, we did make some changes already. We updated the designated volunteer process. So I put in your packets an outline of the letter that we sent home to all parents, informing them of the changes to our process. And what we're doing is we're just making it a little tighter, a little more controlled. So we've streamlined the whole process through our Apple Track system. We've set up a short application for the designated volunteers. The principals will then be able to vet all their information, verify their references, and then forward the entire packet on electronically to the central office for the background checks. Since the parents all volunteer their time, the district will pay for the submission costs for each designated volunteer. Okay? And this is because we have updates to the RSA.
I think the important thing to also point out here is that we have volunteers, and we have volunteers who are what we call designated volunteers. And we have to make sure that anyone who might be alone with students for whatever reason, if they're chaperoning and they have to, take students here and there, if they are alone with students, we have to make sure that they've gone through the fingerprinting. We also have volunteers who come in and all they want to do is make copies for the BZ room or do this and that. They're not alone with kids, and so those folks are able to be volunteers without that designation. So this is really something that's been in the works for about a year, and we tried out the process a little bit in Timberlane and got some pretty good feedback, so we want to do the same thing here in terms of using the AppleTrack, which is, they're not applying to be a volunteer, but we're using the application registration process in order to have the volunteers put it in one place electronically and to move it right straight on to the central office.
Now, when it comes to like PTSA enrichment and all those volunteers, what are the requirements there?
PTSA activities and events, they should all be vetted through the designated volunteer system.
But it's we're allowing them to use our school, and it's for our kids. I can't assume that we're going to rely on everybody else to do the right thing. Do we know that they have some process that we vetted, or they can't use our school? I don't mean PTSA, anybody who uses our school.
Okay, so anybody who uses our school is a little bit different, but
PTSA is already doing it. We're already doing
Okay, no, I'm just using them
fingerprinting
as
with
an
them.
example.
For anyone or an organization who comes in and uses our school, that organization is supposed to be doing their own vetting. Boy
Supposed
Scouts,
to be.
Girl Scouts.
It's like this. The PTSA is its own separate organization, and they have rules and laws and bylaws that they have to follow, and in many circumstances, it's similar to what the school board has to follow. Now, PTSA has its own parent organizations as well that it answers to, and they have to submit all the paperwork. They have a working relationship with our schools and our administrators and our staffs. And we allow the PTSA to distribute information, but there's always a disclaimer on there that it's not sponsored by the school district or by the school board. So the PTSA is responsible for ensuring their checks. Now, a couple of years ago when I was attending the PTSA meetings regularly is when they started to implement these changes with that particular organization, and it was if they had two people in the room, so like a main teacher and an assistant teacher for the enrichment classes, then they didn't have to go through the background checks because you weren't going to have an adult in the room alone with students. But yeah, it would be, the responsibility would be on the PTSA organization, just the same as if it were the Girl Scout organization, the responsibility would be on the Girl Scout organization to go through those background checks. What this is for Hampstead School District volunteers, and specifically just the volunteers that may find themselves in a situation where they're alone with one of our students. That's when it's our responsibility, and that's when we have to pay, or we extend the courtesy to pay for their background checks.
I hear what you're saying,
I
but it's
understand
the crack that something falls through. So it's Girls on the Run, it's PTSA, I don't care who it is, right? It's our school. And believe me, if something happened under someone else's watch, it's our school, and something will happen there legally. So do we vet anybody that uses our school to make sure they have something in place?
I just want to speak to...
That's what I'm asking.
The only...
This sounds great.
The only controllable we have is if it's something that goes through my office, that they are working with our students. That is the primary focus of this program, which is to make sure if someone is there. What you referred to is great. What we did with the PTSA is if they're running an after-school program, then they will be vetted, and they have already done that as a designated volunteer. We've upgraded the process to a much better process, quicker, different streamline, and I like it. It also has a reference checking, which we didn't in the past, so we've improved that process. We are going to be expanding the number of people that will be doing this as well. For example, Dr. Wilson gave a good example. If they're assisting a teacher putting up artwork or something in the copy room, they will not need to be vetted. But if they are going to be out on a field trip, or they're doing something where they could be left alone with students, the DI team as an example, they will all need to run through this process. So we know with assurance that they are working with our children and they've met the criteria that we need to follow. The groups that use our school tend to be community groups, like the local community basketball league, the local Boy Scouts, and I'll stand behind what Kathleen is saying. Every organization is responsible for what they do with the students. I'll give you an example. The Catholic Church sends a person over to escort the children across the street for CCD classes. That is a person that I'm curious if we're going to have to do a designated volunteer. They're walking off site with our children. I think that I'm going to have to talk to Father Mark. They are going to have to be designated because they are walking away with the children from my school.
St. Anne's does background checks on their CCD.
Yes, I know they do. I actually had to do it at my church because I worked with the youth at my church. And I asked them if they wanted me to do the training, but that's another conversation. I think the other significance here is we don't know exactly who's going to be doing some of those Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, basketball on the weekends. If we start doing this, when the Mothers Club comes in on a Saturday, you're asking us to get involved with their business. I'm curious if that is too much of an expansion of the intention of this law.
So what about the YMCA program that does before and
They
after
have their
school?
own pieces that they do, and theirs is actually much more stringent because every one of those people are employees of that organization. They're not a volunteer.
Right.
They're an employee of them, and they contract to us. Just like the foster grandparents, they go through their own pieces. It's a federal program. They've been vetted through that program. I've actually had a conversation recently because of all of this new conversation here. Theirs is actually ramped up because it's a federal rules that they have to follow.
I know that I had to do a background check to be a Girl Scout, like an adult in the room for Girl Scouts. So, I mean, the background checks for volunteers isn't a foreign concept by any stretch of the imagination. And I agree with you that when it comes to the safety of our children, I would rather err on the side of caution.
I'm not saying
A
they
lot of
need to
it-
do this, but if you verify that the Girl Scouts have their process, you know, did Girls on Run volunteers, do they have to do this?
I think the
Did
girls on the
PTS
run, we're going to have them, I'm going to have to talk to them because it is a state program, and I'm going to have to check into that one because there's a whole bunch of new layers that have come with this from our previous conversation, which I actually appreciate. It's more work, but I think it's good effort.
I know most of these people are parents, but that,
It takes one to...
That doesn't matter.
Yes, I understand all
Yeah.
of that.
And I think our platform is, when in doubt, designate. So we're going to be, we're going to be making sure that they go through the background checks and fingerprinting.
I was really hoping you were going to say, when in doubt, check them out.
Yep.
We won't be checking out lunch buddies because they will never be left alone with the child.
Well, they're
Things
not
like that.
volunteers, they're visitors.
Yes, they're still with the children in the school, but if they are there, I mean, that's an example of where they're under the supervision of a member of my staff. Not to mention they're in multiple camera layers. So yes, there are a lot of pieces there, but if a lunch buddy wanted to step out of the room with the child, out of bounds. That will not be something that's in the world of acceptable.
Yeah, our intent is not to have less volunteers because people don't want to go through this. Our intent is for protection and privacy, to make sure that, when we cannot share these files when we go through the fingerprinting. You know, we get a report, we say, thank you very much, you're fine for this year. This has to be done annually. So this is something new that we're dealing with. And it's not as simple as it used to be, but what in this world is? You know, it's for the protection of all the kids. So we're taking it upon ourselves, and again, this is another item that's unintended consequences in terms of budgeting. But if we had asked volunteers to have to pay for this, we wouldn't get any.
Oh, I don't know about that here.
I don't know about that, $21? I don't know.
No,
It was an obstacle when we had the previous conversation. As a matter of fact, the PTSA put money in their budget to cover the people that needed to have it done through their program. So that is an obstacle for some families.
Yeah. And I understand and respect that it would be an obstacle for some families. I'm just saying that as far as having no volunteers because of it, I don't think that that's an issue.
Well,
but
stand
like
corrected,
I said, I respect.
less, maybe less.
It's a volunteer. They're
Yeah.
donating their time. The least we can do is pay for the background check for them. So it's not an issue, but yeah.
Okay, I think the bottom line here is if this board, too, is going to be true to its goals, we've always said that safety is a number one in our buildings, and this is a big piece to that. So if we're going to align ourselves with safety, this is a big piece that we also have to embrace and support. So,
We wanted to have you all hear about it because we are going to be posting some letters in the application process or the registration process online. And in case there were any complaints coming through, because this is something, an extra step, I wanted you all to be aware of why we were doing it.
And we did invest at the SAU level in fingerprinting
Yeah.
equipment.
And it is so
Help this process along.
It's so much easier using that electronic fingerprinting machine.
Very nice.
I just have a quick question.
Okay, thank you.
Is this what's good, are we sending this home to everybody? Like okay.
I just want to give you an example of what it's going to look like, so
Okay.
you can see everything.
I have a question about the link.
I know what you're going to
I'm
ask.
just asking.
I know what you're going to ask.
Just says Timberlane, we'll correct that.
I was just wondering. I don't want to confuse people. There is confusion between districts and SAUs
And also,
Where is that?
if you just want to make,
on the link.
I guess it is
It says
clear.
Timberlane instead of
maybe so.
Hampstead.
The only thing I was just going to, is just to make clear to them, they're not applying for a job, they're not applying to be a volunteer. It's just to streamline, it's just how we process
Correct.
the volunteer data.
All right.
Okay, well, they are actually applying to be a volunteer. I mean, there is an application. You're going to have to give some demographics. You're going to have to also,
Talk about your.
because I have to do your reference calling or somebody from my office, and then I will forward it down to the SAU for the next action, which is to set up the closure of the fingerprinting and such.
I have my computer over here if you wanted to see the application, okay?
And when are, oh, sorry.
Well, I'm just wondering, I think this is more for Dr. Dancy, but at the beginning of the school year, when the parents get all of their paperwork, this is going to be in the school mint
Yes,
process?
it will be. That's
Okay.
already,
We're going to be adjusting those forms because the old application form was in school mint, but we're going to, it needs to be redirected now more towards AppleTrack.
Yeah. So is it going to be like the information there and then click on this link, but they'll be able to access it through School Mint?
they'll get a link to go to do it. Just a
Hopefully.
quick description and
He
say if
looks
you want
worried.
to do it here.
That we're going to need to work out, because what I don't want to do is get them into the middle of their forms and then have them link out of their school mint forms and not complete the school mint forms.
Right.
So we do have a link prepared on the website. It's just waiting for your information tonight, and I'll turn it on. That's under the parent tab on each of our websites that takes them to the designated volunteer application.
Right. And I understand that it's a little bit of a different rollout because we're doing this in the middle of a school year. So I completely understand that. I'm okay with that, and I'm just looking forward to the next thing, you know, whether it be like volunteer, do this separately, however you can do it. But to me, it just makes sense that it would have to be somewhere in School Mint for the parents to access it.
I understand what you're saying there. I would just hate for them to click on that link
agree.
and then leave school mint completely
I agree.
without submitting.
I'm sure you can figure it out.
Amy, thank you very much.
When is, When is this going home? I'm only asking because I'm thinking about the timeline of all the spring,
Okay, we are
Field
trying
trips.
to get this in place as quickly as possible,
Yeah.
especially because of the designated volunteer load.
Mm-hmm.
They can actually go to the recent files that are on file, like the fingerprinting of some other candidates, as soon as I can get them to fill out that little application
Mm-hmm.
and forward it, so they will just move quicker if they're already a designated volunteer. And the others, we want to get this done in the next few weeks.
yeah,
So it's going to be in bits and pieces on Friday.
okay, great,
All right.
thank you.
I just want to remind everyone here and viewing that our next meeting will actually be our deliberative session. That'll be Tuesday, February 5th, beginning at 7 o'clock in the Hsdsb Middle School. Snow date is February 6th, Wednesday, at 7 o'clock. Voting, the second part, will be Tuesday, March 12th. The polls will be open from 8 to 8 at the Hsdsb Middle School. Also, this year, our school district moderator, who also happens to be the town moderator, Attorney Neil Reardon, has published his list of rules and regulations that he expects to be followed at both the school and the town deliberative. That can be found on the town website. A list of what he's following. I understand I've read it, it's not going to be Robert's rules this year, but regular, a general consensus of what the body wants in the moment. So anyway, if anyone would like to take a look at those, so you'll be prepared coming in on the deliberative. Most of you know that's you sign in, bring your ID with you, your license ID, sign in, you'll have a name tag for the deliberative. Just want to let everybody know. That's in 2 weeks. Okay?
Just to follow up, we are working on the slide presentation for that, so, following similar presentations that we've done in the past. I know last year the moderator didn't want to have a lot of extra information on there, so it's going to be strictly about the
warrant articles.
The warrant articles. So if we'll get it out to you or the board for any further, changes, but we're working on it with Mr. Dowd.
Yeah, the moderator was very specific about that last year. He let us continue, but there were a lot of things cut out, like our mission statement, things that just applied to the school district will be gone, and we'll come in ready to just discuss the warrant articles.
Right.
So, okay. Policies, got a bunch of them. These are all for first read, and there's 13 of them. Just read them quickly for the record. BGE, which is policy dissemination. JLA, student insurance. JCA, change of school assignments. JEC, manifest educational hardship. JLCE, first aid and emergency medical care. JLC, student health services. JLI, safety program. BEDG, minutes. IMBD, high school credit for 7th and 8th grade coursework. KB, parental involvement. EHB, data records retention. AC, non-discrimination. And finally, EEAF, special use of school budgets. School buses. I know we've taken a look at them.
So I'll make the motion that the board approve on first read the 13 named policies and advance to second read.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
There was one, this looks like it's the last 2 policy committee meetings worth of policies that we're doing, is that right?
We got snowed out in November.
Yeah, okay. So there was one that came up in policy where it was a change of law that triggered the policy review. And basically what it is now is, the way New Hampshire changed the law, there's now a conflict between the federal law and the state law with regards to special education. So I'm trying
Was
to.
that JEC? Manifest educational hardship, maybe?
No, because
No,
that was the
that's
meeting
not it.
prior. Do you remember which one it was, Roxanne?
I don't think it's on this list.
Oh, you didn't forward it?
Table 1.
We did table one. Remember Karen was going to go back and get further clarification?
Yes, did we table that one? I know we tabled the data one, the data
Yes,
plan
I
one.
think that
So we
was-
tabled the other one too? Okay.
Oh, no, we didn't table it. And because what we ended up doing was if we found that it was going to be a change, we would add it later.
Okay, so it must be going to be a change then, because I don't think I see it here.
And it was, Dr. Dancy, what was the one that you thought was for special ed and not data?
Oh, this was the data retention?
EHB, number
Oh,
11.
that's right. Okay, so there's, if you go to EHB, there's a
Data
discrepancy. We forwarded the New Hampshire School Board Association proposed language.
Yes.
However, there's a discrepancy between the way the New Hampshire law is written and the way the federal law is written. And basically, okay, so on the second page of this policy, the second page,
It's when we can destroy special education records up to the
Right.
30th
age, right?
birthday. It used to be 60, at age 60.
yes.
Now, this new law says we can, with notice, destroy special education records by the 30th birthday,
Yes.
all right?
But
but-
the discrepancy here is that it's the parents or guardians that may at any time request, which is kind of strange. So it doesn't really give the legal authority for the student to request it themselves.
At age 18. Because under
yes.
special education law, the rights revert to the student at age 18. And in the law that they just passed in New Hampshire, it says nothing about the adult student. It says everything about the person who can ask for these records to be destroyed or to hold on to the records, if that's the case, are just the parent or guardian. So we're trying to get clarity as to where does the adult student fit into this new regulation, because there was no language in there to indicate that, and we know that there really should be.
Yes.
Okay, so we can still vote to move these on.
Yes, you can.
And also ask the policy committee
Well,
by the next time to come, if you can come back with some
I
clarification.
honestly think this would likely be a call to the New Hampshire School Board Association and let them point out to them that there's a discrepancy between the law, and even though their policy follows the New Hampshire state law, it doesn't really follow the federal laws. And I think that the legislature needs to go back and fix the law.
Oh, yeah, they'll like hearing
So
that. Good
can we
one.
get, can,
Why don't you call and tell them that?
Well-
Yeah.
so can we get a brief, like 1 or 2 paragraph write-up of that? I'm going to be up there at the end of the month.
Are you?
Yeah,
And you can talk to them?
I'll talk to Barrett when I'm up there.
What do you
Okay.
think, Roxanne?
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, that's what, I haven't had a chance to talk to Karen Gallagher,
Uh-huh.
because I was going to ask her to go to her association as well and find out, you know, she brought this up to my attention. So
Yeah.
they're thinking about it, but I need to know if they're doing anything as an association as well.
This is strange.
I'm happy to bring it up. Incidentally, and he'll be there when I'm up there,
Huh?
outside counsel to the New Hampshire School Boards Association is a man by the name of Dean Eggert.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Okay.
All right, so let's move it, and then maybe we'll have more clarity by the next time we meet.
All in favor? The motion on the floor? It's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Board comments and correspondence.
I got to go to the Jingle Jangle. That was a whole lot of fun.
At the Jingle Jangle as well.
Yes, it was
Always a
super
good
cute. That was really fun. Other than that, it's been policy committee meetings, and I got a sustainability committee meeting, and I've done all kinds of research, and they're going to be so excited when I go. And that's that. SAU meetings, you guys were all there, all the run-of-the-mill stuff, you know.
Jim? Nope, I'm all set.
Are we skipping to me? I don't know, she's looking at me.
Oh,
I had the District Safety Committee meeting in December. The only other piece is I attended the town forum on Saturday at the library. Thank you again to the library for putting this together. I think it's a really great opportunity for people in town to really come out and look at all the different organizations we had. We had a few people stop by the table and talked a bit about school board and a bit about Article 2 for the renovations. One thing I'd like to remind everybody watching that I mentioned to a lot of people, if you have questions about anything, the budget or the bond issue for Article 2, you can find all of our email addresses on the school district website and email us, and we will get you information if you have questions. We would rather you ask questions than have misinformation out there. So that's it.
Thank you.
A lot of the
Also-
stuff that
Same
has,
stuff.
same stuff that has been mentioned. I will say one thing, and I'll steal people's thunder because I'm sure that you would have said this as well, but something that occurred at our most recent SAU meeting. For those in Hampstead that didn't watch it or maybe follow it, is that we did accept the retirement of Dr. Wilson at the end of this school year. And I will say for myself personally, I just want to thank you for your service to the students here in the Hampstead School District and your work with this board, Dr. Wilson. So
Thank
very
you.
much appreciated.
It's been a pleasure, really, it has. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Dr. Wilson?
Yes, personnel report. It's that time of year, as you know, in terms of retirements, and we have received 2 retirements from our professional staff. One with 29 years of experience, and that's Marianne Boucher, the HCS elementary teacher, with much regret because of all that she has offered. As well, with 21 years of experience, Sandy Kavician, who is the physical education teacher at Hampstead Central School. So we wish them well and much success in their retirement, and we'll miss them quite a bit. So that's on my personnel roster. As far as my report, a couple of things. The Pinkerton contract is at our attorneys right now under review. There's a few things that we're checking out in terms of the changes. Much of it is boilerplate, but we'll bring it to your attention probably the next meeting.
So can I just mention one thing on the Pinkerton contract? Derry just renegotiated theirs. So you may want to, I know you already talked to, I can't think of their superintendent, but I know you already talked to their superintendent, but you might want to just compare notes. Because I know that Derry asked for some concessions. I don't know if they got them. I just know that they were going in asking for some concessions from Pinkerton on some things. So.
Thank you. As well, I will have, for your entertainment, new school buses. We will have them at the town hall on February 12th. We'll have one here for you to see, get on, kind of get a tour of what the new buses look like. Want to give you guys an opportunity to see what we have purchased.
Heard glowing reviews
Yes.
so far. What about anyone else? Glowing reviews.
They have some nice additions that you wouldn't see in the old buses. So those buses will be here at 6:30 to 7. So please come a little early and jump right on board. I believe Chandra or Marie will be here to answer any questions, and of course we'll be here. I know Mr. Gary will be here too. I also want to just take an opportunity to recognize a staff member here who has been awarded the VFW Middle School Teacher of the Year. It's Kevin Fisher, our very own. And each year the VFW does recognize 3 exceptional teachers, elementary, middle, high, for their outstanding commitment to teach Americanism and instill patriotism in their students. Howie Stedman nominated Kevin in the fall for this award because of his participation in the Veterans Day program and the Memorial Day program. He was asked to put together some artifacts of the work that he uses in the classroom, the repertoire of the choral ensembles that illustrate the connection to the Holocaust, Martin Luther King, examples of the Hamilton Unit. And 2 weeks ago, he was notified that he was selected as the state winner. So there was a certificate of accomplishment. They had a reception, I believe, for the teachers. And there was a $375 cash award. So now the next step is that he will be on his portfolio will go for the national consideration at the national level. So again, it's an accomplishment and a recognition of a staff person. Kevin does wonderful things in terms of the music program. So I wanted the board to be aware of that. Yep. We just finished on the 18th, a professional development day, and from all accounts, we're hearing from the teachers that it was an excellent day that they felt they got a lot of good ideas. And we had a woman, the speaker was Janessa DeLoe, and Janessa is a clinical psychologist. She has been working with a lot of students and children and families with a variety of either situations of depression, anxiety, ADHD, academic challenges, autism, and histories of traumatic experiences and regulation difficulties. When we requested to speak, have someone nationally known, we inquired with Cassie Yackley, who is actually from New Hampshire, another doctor who has been really focused in New Hampshire on this topic of trauma-sensitive schools, understanding kids who bring some trauma to their experience in schools and what we can do in classrooms to help that. And Cassie wasn't available because she's now almost a national speaker, and she does a lot of work with districts around New England. So she suggested Janessa. And Janessa is a doctorate. She's completed her dissertation. She came and delivered a session for our for our teachers, and she was highly recommended by Dr. Cassie Yackley. Come to find out, she went through our school system. So it was kind of a special moment because, she was delivering a message. Teachers, I felt really connected, and she gave them hands-on ways to help some of these students kind of negotiate through their classroom experiences. So it was well received, and lots of great advice for teachers, and it's part of our system of care work that we're doing this year. And so I just wanted to, highlight that, you never know what's going to happen with someone's career and obviously their education. We know Jason has gone through the school system here, and Caitlin, and, I think there are many who come back and give. And certainly in Janessa's world, she's become, I think, a favorite for our staff in understanding childhood trauma and how to deal with it. So I wanted to just give her some kudos for that. And that's all that I had to present.
Motion to accept the consent agenda, including with regret, Marianne and Sandy's retirements.
Second.
All in favor?
Well, can I just say first, though, that this is a very difficult time of the year. Was it just last week that we found out about Roxanne's retirement, and now we have Mrs. Boucher, and I've always called her Mrs. K. These are some very veteran teachers that will be sorely missed.
Agree.
Okay. All right, motion's on the table. This has been seconded. All in favor? Thank you. Emma, did you think of any questions or any concerns that you want us to bring up Thursday night?
I did. So first off, I'd like to say that I think that there have been a lot of successes from Hampstead students up at Pinkerton, and especially in the older or in the upper classes, I think that I've seen this presence in a bunch of the clubs and organizations and sports, but I feel this sort of lessons as like in the incoming freshmen, the current sophomores. I think that there's definitely been less participation in these clubs, and I think it would be better if incoming freshmen were given more of an opportunity to learn about everything that is offered at Pinkerton, because I do feel that once they get into their freshman year and they get into their freshman seminar, by the time that they finally learn about what actually goes on at Pinkerton, it's too late.
Good point. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we don't have other business or old business, but we are going to go into non-public under RSA 91A3 2L.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Mrs. Abbruzzese?
Yes.
Mr. Cipriano?
Yes.
Mrs. Parnell?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
And Mrs. Yusenka?
Yes, in
Thank you.
cable, we will not be making any decisions, so please feel free to go home. Thank you very much.